Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now, this story comes from Practice Complete 1 and says, am I the arsehole here for only paying for one of my daughter's weddings and down payment? So I, 50 male, have 3 kids. Sarah, 35 female, Jessica, 25 female, and Ben, 23 male. My wife and I had Sarah when we were both 16. It wasn't easy, but with both our parents' support, we could finish college while we raised her. When it was time for her to go to college, we didn't have the money to help her. So she took out loans and paid for them herself. We learned from our mistakes and started saving for her siblings, Jessica and Ben, who got around $100K college fund and had no debt. Through all of this, Sarah never complained. She finished her education, got a fantastic job, and could repay the loans in just 3 years while staying with us to save as much as possible. She has also helped us a lot with babysitting her younger siblings, and has always been selfless and helped out in any way she could, maybe even to a fault. So, when she told me 5 years ago she was getting married, I talked to my wife and told her how bad I felt that we never did anything for her and that I wanted to give her the inheritance I got from my grandmother, which was around $50K, to help pay for a wedding and down payment on the house. Luckily, my wife agreed, and even though she didn't really need it, I know it meant a lot to her. The issue is this: Jessica is getting married next year, and I'd assumed we would plan a similar gift for her. She was quite surprised when I told her that we never discussed such plans, and even if we wanted to, we didn't have the budget for it. She told us it wasn't fair that we paid for her sister but would not do the same for her. I tried to explain the situation, telling her that in the long run, we spent twice as much on her and her brother as we ever did on Sarah. However, she's insisted that Sarah was already well off, noting that Sarah and her husband had paid off the house and were doing extremely well financially. I told her that this had nothing to do with how much money her sister had. This was us finally being able to do something for our oldest child. We'd sacrificed so much because we had her at such a young age. She didn't take it well, left angry, and won't speak to us. My wife thinks maybe we should take out a small loan to give her the money because she isn't used to not talking to her kids and is sad she's been left out of the wedding preparations. She is even afraid of us not getting invited to the wedding. But I have put my foot down and won't budge because she is not entitled to our money. Now even Sarah is saying that this is getting out of hand and even offered to help pay half the money. But personally, I'm at a point where I'd rather burn the $50K than give it to her. Sarah and my wife think that this is not worth destroying our family over, but I think that giving in will only make her more entitled in the long run. Tarzan Kitty says, not the arsehole. One child got a funded education and one child got a wedding. I think college girl is probably an entitled brat because she got the higher ticket item. I agree, Sarah got a college education funded and Jessica got a wedding gift. It's not about favoritism, it's about what was possible at the time. Jessica's acting entitled because she didn't get the same thing. That doesn't mean she should get it. Everyone has different needs and circumstances, OP. Not the arsehole. Cautious Session says, Jessica needs to learn the difference between equal and equitable. She thinks things should be equal, even though they never were for her sister, but OP and his wife were trying to treat their children equitably. And another commenter says, so she's ignoring the $100K college education she didn't need to get loans for. If she wants equal, then OP should offer her the wedding fund in exchange for paying back the $100K. That would be true equal. And for me, absolutely not the arsehole, and that kind of entitlement, that kind of expectance of money like that does drive me crazy. And I think you're absolutely right to stand your ground. I think it's always difficult because no one wants to see their family get torn apart because of something, because of money. But underneath all this is that sense of entitlement, which I think will get worse if you was to give in, especially if, Sarah was to give up her portion of the money to help pay. It just feels like she's throwing a tantrum, and if she can't see how entitled she's being after, getting her entire education paid for while her sister struggled through it and paid for it herself, then That's very much a her problem, and I think enabling entitled attitudes is never a good thing. But OP came in with their update and says, "Thank you for all the fantastic comments and personal messages from my last post. After reading the comments, I felt even more convinced that I was in the right, so I sat down with my wife to talk. Following many of your suggestions, I showed her the post and asked her to read it. She wasn't happy, especially when she saw how many people had read it, but she was also really curious. This has been on her mind a lot lately, and she wanted to know what all of you were thinking. She had a few issues with my comments. She believes that when I said I would rather burn the money, it indicates that I need to change my approach to problem solving. While it might be easy for people on the internet to suggest that parents cut off contact with their child, she is not ready to lose her little girl. Additionally, she thinks my statement about doing my duty and wanting to take care of myself comes across as selfish and is not something a parent should say. She believes there is a reasonable compromise. Instead of giving her the full 50k, we can offer her half for the wedding. This way we can cover most of the expenses from our savings, borrow the rest from Sarah if needed, and pay her back within a year. I told her right away that I was not going to do that. I told her that we could separate our finances and that she can return to work full-time to help Jessica pay for the wedding. However, I made it clear that I was done. As selfish as it may seem, I don't feel obligated to Jessica anymore, and I want to enjoy my life while I still can. She replied, as she always does, that I am stubborn, and she would take that step if it meant keeping the family together. I told her it was fine, but to not come to me complaining about her health when she went back to work full-time. A couple of days ago, she came to me and said that she agreed with my proposal. We made a plan to open a joint bank account where we would deposit our monthly expenses. After that, we can each use our personal money however we like. We decided on an amount to keep in our savings account for emergencies and agreed to split the remaining funds 50-50. I agreed to cover 60% of the money needed for our joint expenses. This is the first time we'll have more than one bank account, so I'm a bit nervous about how it will turn out. I also believe she mentioned talking to her boss about working more hours, but I want to avoid getting involved in that discussion. I spoke with Sarah and expressed my concerns about giving Jessica any money, which I believe is a bad idea. However, Sarah insists that she wants to help. She mentioned that while she agrees with my viewpoint, she doesn't want their mum to return to work full-time. She clarified that her decision to help was aimed at supporting their mum, not Jessica. I told her that it was her money, that she could do as she pleased, but like her mum, I wouldn't involve myself in the situation any further. Right before I wrote this post, I sent an email to Jessica expressing my feelings for her. I clarified where I stood and mentioned that she could decide how involved I would be in her wedding. I don't expect a reply, but now I have to wait to see what happens. Edit. I realize now that I didn't explain something clearly. My wife wants to pay 25k for the wedding, which she and Sarah have agreed to split. She believes this is a reasonable compromise, but I disagree with her. Adobe says, "Yeah, not the arsehole. I read the last post and I agree with you. If your wife wants to be the provider for a whole life, let her do that, but you're entitled to enjoy your life too. There is also a difference between solving problems and being a pushover, and your wife clearly is the second." Another commenter says, "I'm not sure if separating finances is a good idea for OP. Since they're married, OP might still be accountable for his wife's debts, even if he doesn't know how bad the situation is. If she maxes out her credit cards or takes out loans, OP could be legally responsible. Something tells me the wife might have only agreed to this financial arrangement so she could take out a loan without OP knowing. OP, you need to sit down with your wife and make it clear that if she gets a loan or racks up credit card debt to continue enabling your entitled daughter, you won't hesitate to file for divorce. Also, consult a lawyer about getting a post-nuptial agreement to protect yourself. You deserve to have a solid retirement plan instead of wasting your hard-earned money on your daughter. She's old enough to take care of her own expenses, and if you keep enabling her, she'll never learn the value of money and hard work. If this doesn't change, you might find yourself struggling financially in retirement instead of enjoying the time you've worked so hard to secure." OP says, "I forgot to mention this in my post, but part of our agreement is that she should not take out any loans with interest. If she decides to borrow money from friends or family, that's her choice, but I want to avoid having another bank loan under my name. However, I'm confident that she won't need to borrow much if she only gives 25k for the wedding, especially since it appears that Sarah is planning to cover half of that amount, which again, I still think is a bad idea. That commenter replied to OP again saying, get a post-nuptial agreement to protect yourself. Your wife could take a loan out behind your back and you won't even know until things spiral out of control. Your wife's behavior is enabling your daughter, but she doesn't realize she's actually harming her. What will happen to your daughter when you and your wife are no longer around? If she never learns the true value of money because you've always bailed her out, she'll be completely unprepared to stand on her own. You've already done more than enough for your kids. It's time to prioritize yourself and focus on building a solid retirement plan where you can enjoy the life you've worked hard for. You deserve that. If your wife wants to keep sacrificing herself, let her, but make it clear that you won't be helping her or putting your life on hold to support her choices. She probably assumes that when you both retire, you'll continue footing the bill for her and your daughter. She likely doesn't take you seriously because you and your older daughter have always allowed your wife to treat you like doormats. Your older daughter shouldn't be paying for her sister's wedding or covering any of her expenses. That only enables your youngest to continue financially abusing her. And another commenter says, and how do you know she won't stop working after the wedding, which will put it all back on you? Opie says you can never be sure. But if she does, then working full-time will be the last of her problems. If she breaks our agreement, I don't see another option but divorce. Now, that update, it just didn't feel positive, and it just feels like there's going to be future issues down the road, separating finances after working together for X amount of time. And giving her the $25,000, I don't think is a compromise. I think it's your wife and Sarah enabling Jessica behind your back. One that's going to fracture your family into little teams, if you like. And I just wonder if sort of like marriage counseling or family therapy or something along those lines, so that you can see each other's thought process in a more logical way, even though I believe that Jessica's being entitled, but it may help your family going forward. But what do you guys make of this situation? What would you say to this? Would you give Jessica the money? Would you stand your ground? What about the update and that solution? It's concerning for me, but what about you? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. Now, our next story comes from No Awareness 8079, and it says, I've been making food for a girl I like. Turns out she's been throwing it all out. I have nowhere else to talk about this, so I'm coming to Reddit. I, 21 male, am in college, and there's this girl I'm sort of head over heels for. We've had a couple of classes together and I know some of her friends, so we see each other and hang out a lot. I thought there was something between us, but I guess I was wrong. I knew she had been going through a tough time with some family issues lately, and I thought she might appreciate not having to worry about cooking while she's worried about all of that. So I've been making her some meals and giving them to her when I see her, usually after class. Food isn't necessarily my love language. I just like to make sure the people I care about are happy and fed. Well, I was catching up with some of our mutual friends, a couple whom live with her, and they told me that she either usually throws out the food or gives it to her roommates. I don't think she's eaten anything I've made for her. She always says, "Oh, you didn't have to do that," or sheepishly when I give her the meals I made. I just figured she was being bashful. I wish she would have just told me to stop so I could have saved some time and energy. I don't know, I'm just upset. I'm not sure where I stand with her now. Edit, some context. I said in a comment that people said I should add to the original post. Her friends encouraged it. I'm very close friends with many people in her close circle, and they knew what I was doing. They said it was sweet. I understand now that it was kinda weird and I probably should have stopped. But I would also say that we're friends rather than acquaintances. We've hung out one-on-one in the past, which she initiated. I think she might just see me as a friend, which is totally fine, and the message about not just giving people food is 100% heard on my end. I just hated to think that she was stressed and going hungry. She's confided to me in the past that she struggles to make time to eat when under stress. So some of the top comments on this one, the first one said, yeah, there's definitely a big difference between, hey, I made cookies, do you want one? And hey, here's a full meal I prepared just for you because I heard your family life is difficult. I will continue to do this every time I see you. Another commenter says, there are so many ways for inexperienced guys to come off creepy when they're trying to do something nice. It's legitimately confusing when you're trying to learn how to interact with women, especially with interactions in media portrayed so unrealistically. But having said that, making food for someone you barely know is inappropriate. OP probably just needs to accept that she's not into him and move on. More generally, being overly friendly and performing extravagant gestures towards someone that has not reciprocated attraction to you is a pitfall. Learn to let go and move on and not become enamored with other people you don't know very well. Another commenter says, I think the real lesson here is just ask. If he had just asked her like, hey, your friend said you're having a hard time and I always have extra food. Would it be helpful if I brought you lunch sometimes or something? Easy for her to say no if she doesn't want it, and not really an awkward thing to ask at all. Another commenter says, you didn't have to do that equals, why the fuck did you do that? Part of me wonders if there's some sort of cultural thing involved with this at the same time as well. I know a lot of people are talking about the romance side of things, but I've mentioned my dad's neighbors in the past. And when they knew about my dad and his illness, they was bringing round food all the time and, offering him food over the fence all the time, like saying, oh, they had some left over. They made quite a lot of curries with rice and they said they got some extra. Would you like some? And they were always passing him food over the fence, which my dad absolutely loved. He loved curries, by the way. And I knew them, but I once got to talk to them after my dad passed away. And the husband was just stood outside and we was chatting and he basically said sorry about what's happened and he gave me a hug, which was really nice as well. And I just thanked them for looking out for my dad at the same time. And he said at the time that we always look after vulnerable people in our culture kind of thing. And it was incredibly sweet. So I am wondering about the culture side of things in this story. But, from my perspective, if someone's just started giving me full meals on the daily, I think initially I'd lie if I say I wouldn't find it quite strange because it just, apart from seeing what my dad went through and all that sort of stuff, it's never happened before. So I potentially might find it quite strange, but I'm conflicted because I find it sad at the same time because I think it's such a sweet thing to do. OP added some of their own comments and says, I don't want anything in exchange. This wasn't really an attempt to woo her. I just wanted to make sure she had enough to eat while she was dealing with all of this. She's told me and our mutual friends in the past that she struggles to eat when she's stressed. Just really care about her and was just trying to help reduce some of her mental load while she's going through a tough time, regardless of whether or not she likes me. We are friends and I do care about her. My family is Ukrainian. I was born there, and food is for sure equated to caring over there. I can't count the amount of times I might have told my baba that I was stressed, tired and upset, and had a plate of food put in front of me as a sort of, I'm sorry you're dealing with that. I'm sort of similar where I trend on the skinny side, especially when I'm not doing super well. So I always appreciated being fed. So OP came in with her update and says, so I heard you guys loud and clear that I might have overstepped on this one. Since me and this girl are friends, and I'm super close with a lot of her friends, I figured last night I would text her and apologize just because of class and me being at her apartment to see her roommates I'm friends with and whatnot. I know I'll still have to be around her in the future. I made it clear that she didn't ever have to speak to me again. I just wanted to let her know that I was so sorry. The conversation went way better than I thought, and it's safe to say we're still on good terms. I figured I'd share this to give everyone closure. The first text said at 6:23 p.m, hey, I just wanted to reach out to let you know I found out you've been getting rid of the food I've been giving you. If what I've been doing has made you uncomfortable, I just wanted to apologize, because that was never my intention. I realized that it was a little much and I should have asked if it was something that you was okay with. You didn't have to keep hanging out with me or even respond to this message. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry that I lightly crossed a boundary with you. She replied saying, hey, you didn't make me uncomfortable at all. I just have a kind of funky relationship with food and I struggle eating things that I didn't make myself. Honestly, I totally owe you an apology for not explaining because I understand you went through the effort to do that for me. And me not eating the food but still accepting it might feel like a slap in the face. In my defense, the food mostly went to my roommates. The only times I've thrown it out is when no one got to it before it got too old. I think it was really sweet that you were thinking of me like that. I was worried that telling you to stop would put you off hanging out with me. You replied saying, that's good to hear. So maybe we skip the food and just hang out next time. I'll be back at school December 1st. She responded, yes, let's do it. Edit, I love how most of Reddit told me to apologize to her and never speak to her again on my last post. And now I'm getting clowned for doing exactly what you guys told me. Pick a struggle, lol. And just a warning before we cover this next comment, it's pretty grim, so if you're eating or whatever right now, or just want to hear something, pretty grim, skip a couple of seconds. It says, I for sure got a lot of comments saying I was a creep. I was probably putting cum in the food. What the fuck? I was simping. I was an incel. I should leave her alone and never talk to her again. I probably scared her by doing too much. Gee whiz, some of those comments, man. Anyway, some of the comments from people says, awesome, a happy ending. Now please go do something about those 283 unread messages. Another commenter says, I think they handled it well, but I don't know about perfectly. The apology is fine, but bringing up not hanging out or even speaking again seems way too self-disparaging. Lol. Another comment says, good. Don't listen to all these Reddit head cases about overstepping a boundary. By giving your friend food. Those people are wacko. Giving multiple meals to a friend without talking about it might be a little awkward, but it's also nice. It's also awkward and nice to graciously accept the gift but not eat it. And it's totally okay to be a friend to someone you're romantically interested in. Everyone has an opinion. You do you. You're both kind of weird, and that's okay. Another commenter says, a friend gifted me a persimmon. I just realized last week that I can't eat persimmons. They spike my blood sugar too high. I didn't tell her. I graciously accepted it even though it will probably rot. I appreciate the gift and it was given with love, so I don't want to reject that. This happens sometimes, OP. I'm just glad that you got it all cleared up, and honestly, it helped out her roommates because they ate it, which helps her indirectly because the people close to her were taken care of better. And the last commenter says, I think there's some fun irony in the fact that posts like this end up here on Reddit because people are driving themselves crazy with the self-talk, so they take it to Reddit, where the crazy Reddit macrocosm just continues the weird insecure self-talk, albeit externally. And the actual conversation that was inevitable all along, that the OP was posting on Reddit to try to avoid occurs. And lo and behold, everything is actually chill, and just having the conversation in the first place would have skipped all the unnecessary insecure BS internally. And then on Reddit. It's a beautiful, awkward, complex emotional process. And I'm here for it. And I'm glad that everything worked out well in the end. But now, I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being involved. And hopefully I will see you in the next one. Take care and much love.